Hey everyone! Ready for a deep dive into something a little unexpected? We're going to be talking about teenage drinking habits in Europe, specifically here in the UK.
Oh, yeah.
And get this, you might be surprised to learn that the girls are actually out drinking the boys. Can you believe that?
It's pretty wild, right? Really challenges those old assumptions.
It really does.
We're looking at data from a recent OECD study, and a Times article highlighted it.
Yeah.
And of course, it sparked a whole lively discussion on Reddit, which is always fun to dig into.
Always.
The study itself uses self-reported surveys of teenagers across Europe, which is a pretty common method, but you always got to remember that it relies on,
Honesty.
exactly, honesty and accuracy of the responses.
Yeah, for sure.
So, grain of salt, as always.
Right. So let's get into it.
Yeah.
What did this OECD study actually find?
Well, it found that British teenage girls are more likely to say they've been drunk repeatedly than boys, but putting them right up there with Hungary, Denmark, and Italy for the rates of repeated intoxication.
I mean, wow, that's pretty surprising. I always thought, growing up, it was always the boys who were more likely to kind of overdo it.
Yeah, and that's exactly what makes this finding so interesting.
Right.
Because, historically, it has been the teenage boys who've held the crown for higher alcohol consumption.
Yeah.
But this study really shows that things are shifting, like significantly.
It's a whole new world.
It really is.
So like 12 European countries.
Yep, 12 European countries where girls are reporting that they're out drinking the boys.
So what's happening? Like, what's going on here? Why are girls seemingly drinking more heavily than boys these days?
Right. That's the big question.
Yeah.
The million-dollar question, right?
Exactly.
Well, one theory that the Times article brought up was that teenage girls might actually be mirroring their mother's drinking habits. And it's really interesting because adult women in Britain, they also have some of the highest rates of what we call binge drinking in Europe.
Okay.
And by binge drinking, just so we're clear, we're talking about having a large amount of alcohol in a short period of time.
Got it.
Which is typically, 5 or more drinks for men and 4 or more for women within about 2 hours.
That's a lot.
It is.
That's interesting because, thinking about it, could there be some sort of generational influence at play here? Like, are girls seeing their mothers, drinking habits and then kind of thinking, oh, that's normal?
I mean, it's definitely a possibility. It's something that needs more research, for sure.
Yeah.
But it's worth looking into.
Yeah, absolutely.
And, of course, it's not just what's happening at home.
Yeah.
The article also mentioned the influence of, alcohol marketing.
Yeah, marketing. Huge. I was just thinking about that. Like, yeah. I remember reading about how alcohol companies are, like, increasingly targeting young women with, like, these really sophisticated campaigns that portray drinking as, well, a pretty glamorous and feminine activity.
It's true. And there's definitely been an increase in marketing specifically geared towards young women.
Yeah.
Often using those stereotypical images of women, socializing.
Yeah, having fun.
Exactly. Having fun with their friends. And, of course, enjoying a nice glass of wine or a fancy cocktail.
And it's not even just the images, it's like the language they use,
Totally.
They often play on like women's social roles and their aspirations, like making it seem like drinking is, well, essential to being a successful, confident woman.
You got it. It's subtle, but it's definitely there.
Oh, sure.
And, that kind of targeted marketing can have a real impact on drinking behaviors, especially, when you're talking about young people who are still figuring out who they are and what's, quote unquote, cool.
Absolutely.
Or acceptable.
Yeah.
So it's a big factor.
You.
And, we also wanted to look at that Reddit discussion that the Times article started.
Yeah, those Redditors.
Oh, yeah.
They always have some interesting thoughts, especially about, this was interesting, the types of drinks that girls and boys tend to favor.
Right. Like one user brought up a really good point.
Okay.
That the type of drink can actually, massively impact how much alcohol someone's actually having.
Oh, for sure.
Boys might stick to beer or cider, which generally has, lower alcohol content per serving.
Right.
But girls often go for wine, spirits, and cocktails, which can be way stronger.
That's so true. And I think sometimes people just don't realize, how much alcohol is in those, quote unquote, girly drinks.
Yeah, totally.
We're not just talking about a glass of wine with dinner here.
No.
We're talking about those huge glasses.
Or multiple glasses.
Exactly. And let's not forget about, cocktails,
Oh, yeah.
which are often like loaded with different types of liquor, all hidden by sugary mixers and fruit and stuff.
All dressed up, but they'll get you.
Exactly. And it's easy to forget that one big glass of wine can have the same amount of alcohol as a pint of beer.
Yeah, when you talk about units of alcohol.
So that's what people mean when they're talking about counting units.
Exactly. It's just a way to compare different drinks and see how much alcohol they have.
Okay, that makes sense.
And when you start comparing units, you realize that those cocktails and big glasses of wine can really sneak up on you.
Yeah.
It's a lot more than you think.
And it's super easy to lose track when you're, having fun, especially with those quick shots.
Oh, this
Or like vodka or tequila. People just down them so fast.
Hold on a second.
It all adds up, though.
It really does.
And another Redditor, they brought up a point that I thought was really interesting, adding like another layer to this whole discussion about the types of drinks consumed.
Yeah.
They were saying that 15-year-old girls, they might be more likely to like have drinks bought for them by older boys, which could, be contributing to their higher consumption levels.
It's a good point, right? It brings up this whole issue of access and influence.
Yeah, totally.
Like if younger girls are being given drinks by older boys, they might drink more than if they were buying their own or being supervised by, adults.
Right. That makes sense.
It's a complex situation for sure. But it highlights that, like, social and cultural factors are often at play when we're talking about teenage drinking habits.
Definitely.
It's not just about personal choices. It's a lot more nuanced than that.
Yeah, it's a whole web of things. Really.
It is.
Really fascinating.
It is.
Yeah, I mean, it really makes you think, like, what are all these different things that could be contributing to this trend of girls out drinking boys?
It's a big question, right?
Right.
And I think we need to remember, it's not just girls choosing stronger drinks. There's, like, bigger societal things happening here.
Yeah, and I saw some of the comments on Reddit were talking about how, drinking is kind of seen as a rite of passage.
Oh, especially here in the UK.
Especially here in the UK.
Yeah, for sure.
And that can be kind of a problem because it makes it seem normal to drink a lot.
Absolutely. And it can really overshadow the actual health risks that come with drinking too much.
Exactly. Because it's easy to get caught up in the social side of it, having fun with your friends. But we can't forget that drinking too much is not good for you, especially when you're young and your body and brain are still developing.
Right. The NHS is pretty clear about that. They say no drinking under 18.
And for good reason.
For good reason. There's a reason for that.
Because alcohol can damage your organs, increase the risk of accidents.
Oh, yeah, and injuries.
And even affect your mental health, like anxiety and depression.
And it's not even just about avoiding those immediate problems, It's about your long-term health, too.
Right.
The earlier you start drinking heavily, the higher your risk of developing alcohol-related problems later on.
It's interesting, because some people think if you let kids drink a little when they're younger, it'll teach them to be responsible.
I've heard that.
But the studies actually show the opposite.
They do. It's actually better to delay drinking for as long as possible.
That makes a lot more sense to me.
Yeah.
And, speaking of this, just before New Year's Eve, there was that incident with the Welsh ambulance service.
Oh, yeah, they declared a critical incident.
Yeah, because they had so many calls.
So many calls.
And a lot of them were related to people drinking too much during the celebrations.
New Year's Eve?
New Year's Eve.
Makes sense.
It's just a reminder of how alcohol can put a strain on our healthcare system.
Absolutely. And it highlights how this isn't just an individual problem. It affects everyone.
Exactly. It's a societal issue.
And going back to those Reddit comments, there was some back and forth about whether just comparing the number of drinks people have actually shows how often they get drunk.
Well, that's true because people process alcohol differently, right? Some people can handle more than others.
Exactly. Everyone has a different tolerance level.
But even if we can't say for sure that girls are getting drunk more often based just on how many drinks they have, it's still worth thinking about why they might be choosing those stronger drinks in the first place.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah,
is it just that they like the taste better? Or is there something else going on? Like maybe they think certain drinks are more sophisticated or more feminine?
Yeah, and I remember one comment saying that maybe girls are choosing those like fancier, more Instagrammable drinks because that's how they're marketed.
Oh, interesting.
Like a symbol of a certain lifestyle.
Yeah, and marketing has a huge influence on what people buy, especially young people.
I mean, think about all those colorful, fruity cocktails you see on social media.
They look good.
Way more appealing than a pint of beer, right?
Right, but they can be deceptively strong.
Yeah, they can really sneak up on you.
Exactly. It's easy to forget how much alcohol you're actually having when it's all dressed up in a fancy glass.
And, there was one Reddit thread that got a bit controversial.
Oh, yeah. What was that one?
It was about, some users were talking about a potential link between British women's drinking habits and the high number of single mothers in the UK.
That's a really sensitive topic, and we need to be careful not to make sweeping judgments or stereotypes about entire groups of people.
Yeah, exactly. We can't assume things about people's lives based on just a few data points.
And just because two things happen at the same time doesn't mean one caused the other.
Right. Correlation doesn't equal causation.
There are so many reasons why someone might become a single mother, and we need to respect the complexity of their individual situations.
Yeah, and we're not trying to judge anyone here.
No, not at all.
We're just trying to understand the bigger picture.
Exactly. Exploring the trends and the data, not pointing fingers.
Okay, so moving on, one Redditor asked a question about a potential connection between alcohol and declining fertility rates.
That's an interesting one. Is there any actual science behind that?
Yeah, actually there is.
Okay.
Research shows that alcohol can affect both male and female fertility.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
And if you drink heavily, it can increase the risk of problems during pregnancy.
So basically, drinking too much could be one reason why people are having fewer children.
It's definitely a possibility. And, beyond the physical effects, there's also the cultural side of it.
Right.
Some people argue that if young people drink a lot, they might focus more on partying and going out than settling down and having families.
Yeah, I could see that.
It's a question for sociologists and all those folks who study these things, but it's interesting to think about how our personal choices can affect these bigger trends.
Totally, like a ripple effect.
And speaking of future generations, one Redditor pointed out that younger people seem to be more health conscious in general.
Really? Interesting.
Yeah, and they might be drinking less than older generations.
Mm-hmm.
They even mentioned vaping as a possible alternative.
That's fascinating. It makes you wonder if all those public health campaigns are actually working.
Right, like all those ads about the dangers of drunk driving and stuff.
Yeah, those definitely have an impact on people's attitudes.
And we can't forget about social media, right?
Oh, of course. Social media is everywhere.
Like, think about all those fitness influencers and health bloggers who are promoting a healthy lifestyle.
It's a whole different world from the, lad culture that was so big in the 90s and 2000s.
Totally. Yeah, which was all about drinking a lot.
Yeah.
So maybe seeing all these healthy images on social media is encouraging young people to prioritize their well-being.
Makes sense. It's all about what you're exposed to.
And let's not forget about money.
Oh, yeah. The economy.
The economy.
It plays a role.
Like, going out for drinks is expensive, especially these days.
Especially with the cost of living going up.
So maybe young people are choosing to do other things that are cheaper.
Like staying in with friends or finding free events.
Exactly. Or maybe even just going out less often.
And, there are fewer places to go out and drink these days, too, like with pubs and clubs closing down.
That's true. I hadn't thought of that.
Yeah. So maybe that's part of it, too.
It's really interesting to see how all these things are connected,
It is. It's like a puzzle with all these different pieces.
Social stuff, economic stuff, cultural stuff. It's all mixed up.
It all comes together to shape how young people are drinking today.
It's fascinating.
It is.
Thinking about all this, it really strikes me how normal it is to drink a lot, especially here in the UK.
Yeah, it's like part of our culture, isn't it?
It is. It's like almost expected.
Yeah, like you're supposed to be able to handle your drink, have all these crazy stories about nights out.
Exactly. And it's almost like a badge of honor.
But that kind of thinking can be dangerous, right?
Totally.
Because it makes it seem like the risks aren't a big deal.
It makes light of it.
Yeah, and it can make people feel pressured to drink more than they want to just to fit in.
Oh, for sure.
Or avoid being judged.
Yeah, exactly.
And it makes it harder to talk honestly about the negative side of alcohol, for individuals and for society as a whole.
Like, people don't want to be a downer.
Exactly. It's like we've become numb to the risks. We hear the warnings, but it's like, yeah, whatever.
Because everyone drinks, right?
Yeah, it's just part of life.
So it's not even just about what individuals choose. It's about, the whole attitude towards drinking in our culture.
Exactly. It's bigger than any one person.
And that's the tricky part, right?
Oh, yeah?
Like, how do you change something that's been part of the culture for so long?
Right. It's a big challenge.
It feels huge.
It does.
But I think maybe it starts with just being aware of it.
Yeah, awareness is key.
And talking about it more openly, especially with young people.
I agree. Education is so important, and we need to do it in a way that actually connects with them.
Yeah, not just saying don't drink, but actually having real conversations.
Exactly. Getting to the root of why people drink too much.
And maybe instead of focusing on the bad stuff, we could talk more about the good things that happen when you drink less.
I love that. Like how
Mhm.
much better you feel when you're not hungover.
Yeah, or how much money you save.
Or even just being more present in your relationships, you know?
Being a better friend, partner, all that.
Exactly.
It's about giving people the information and letting them make their own choices.
Yeah, empowering them to make healthy decisions.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I think the big takeaway is that this whole thing about girls out drinking boys, it's complicated.
It really is.
It's not just one thing. It's like marketing, social norms, what kind of drinks are popular.
All those things you mentioned, plus cultural influences, the
Yeah.
messages we're sending about alcohol.
Right. And it makes you think, if this keeps going, what's going to happen?
Yeah, what are the long-term consequences?
Both for young people's health, but also for society as a whole.
It's a big question.
It is, and there are no easy answers.
Not at all, but hopefully this conversation has gotten people thinking.
Yeah, we've looked at the data, talked about the social context, and hopefully made people think a little more critically about this whole thing.
Exactly.
So now it's your turn.
Yeah, what do you think about all this?
What are your thoughts on this trend? What do you think will happen in the future?
And what role can we all play in creating a healthier, more responsible drinking culture?
We'd love to hear your thoughts, so share them on social media or reach out to us directly.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.
We'll catch you next time.